So part of my past is having, because of a relationship with God like we all have. The Spirit said, do what I called you to do, and I'll take care of the rest.
When you get into that space of realizing who you really are at a core, which is energy, then you can raise your vibrational frequency, your energy level, up to a level where you can connect and make that divine connection.
Black people in this country have to embrace ownership. We don't own anything. Therefore, all the dollars we get go out to somebody else who owns things.
Look for a miracle in America's mess and make a testimony out of your test. Well, kind greetings and welcome to our amazing Thursday, Triumphant Thursdays with Dr. PJ, and we also welcome tonight our co-chaplain, Chaplain Maureen F. Burns. Quite a delight to have her on this show, and welcome, Chaplain. All the way out there in Hawaii, where it's about 72 degrees or 82 degrees?
82.
82 degrees. I'm doing my best to stay in Michigan and not move to Hawaii, because that sounds mighty good when it's 21 in where I live. Sounds mighty good. Our purpose on Triumphant Thursdays with Dr. PJ and Chaplain Maureen is to bring to consciousness various subjects that impact and intersect with global peoples. More importantly, we want you to experience with us our time together, to be 100% present with us as we seek to be 100% present with you. We have some empowering information for you tonight, and let me just say, this is a repeat of our Tuesday night broadcast on the veteran among us, the LGBTQ Veterans Plus LGBTQ non-veterans program, where we started talking about the first stage of grief, which is denial. And Chaplain Maureen gave us the definition of what denial is, and I'm going to ask her to very quickly, if she can bring that up, to tell us the definition of denial that she found. It is the first of 5 stages, according to Kubler-Ross, a Scandinavian psychiatrist who is now deceased, and so if you found it, have at it.
Well, the definition of denial is simply the action of declaring something to be untrue. But as Kubler-Ross uses it, it has to do with when you are yourself either facing death or a loss, or on the other side of a death or loss. Going through the process of denial means not recognizing what's actually happening and not accepting it.
And what was the example that we could come up with? Many, like what happened 2 weeks from yesterday. You know, many of us on are in denial. We can't believe that something like that would happen in America. And even more importantly, we are grieving as veterans, beholding some of our fellow veterans going against everything that for which we took the oath. Just absolutely unbelievable. Take a minute to explain, to share with the listening and viewing audience how you responded when they told you that you had cancer stage 4.
Okay. You can see from my throat right here, I'm missing part of my throat. I had stage 4 tonsil and lymph node cancer. And the reason it was stage 4, it was extending from the tonsils into the lymph nodes and starting to spread through my body. And I went to the doctor and I found a lump on my neck. Actually, my roommate found it. And I went in and they said, you have stage 4 cancer. And I said, how could I have stage 4? I just discovered it. You guys didn't tell me I had anything wrong with me. This can't be happening. It can't be stage 4. Something's wrong. Do the test again. I just didn't want to accept it. And then in the same breath, the doctor said to me, and we're going to put you in hospice here at Fort Miley so that you can access the radiation and chemotherapy treatments easier. And I had to deal with that at the same appointment. So I was facing going into hospice, which to me means you're at the end of your life.
Right.
And so I just was numb.
Sure. And wondered what happened to stage 2 and 3. I remember you saying that the other night. What? Well, what happened to 1, 2, 3? We're at a point where we can laugh about some of these things now, but they were not funny at the time that they happened. And we also talked about not only our personal experiences and the veterans' responses to the insurrection, but we also talked about the personal deaths that we had experienced, and how Deacon Leonard Wayne Connor, Bishop Flunder's brother, had encouraged you to deal with what you were dealing with. He also died in October, I believe, in December. And so we're grieving from that. And he took us through his process of denial and all of the rest of the processes by keeping us informed on Facebook. And that helped him through his ordeal. And how did he help you through yours?
Well, I had already had 8 weeks of chemotherapy and radiation, and then they came and told me I was going to have surgery and that I might lose muscles in my neck and the coordination of my head and neck. And I was terrified. And Leonard came to me and said he had colon cancer at the time, and he was stage 4 also. And he said, no, you are going to fight this. You have to face your fear. You have to have the surgery. It's going to be all right. You need to have it. Damn it.
And how long ago was that?
That was 3 years ago.
And how close to that was his diagnosis?
He was actually diagnosed 4 years ago.
Okay.
So he lived 4 years after being diagnosed stage 4.
And you have no signs of cancer in your throat. You are free, cancer free.
No, you're not actually cancer free until you pass the 5-year mark.
I see. Okay. All right.
But I have had no reoccurrence, and I also have no head neck problems. They didn't have to take muscles. They just took the lymph nodes and the tonsils and the thyroid.
So how long did you live in that first stage of denial, Chaplain Mo? Do you remember?
The whole time I was in the hospital awaiting chemotherapy and radiation. So 16 weeks, so 4 months. But
Okay.
I have to tell you that the stages overlap each other. So I wasn't in denial steadily the whole time.
Sure.
I initially was in denial about the cancer at being stage 4. I was initially in denial about having to go to hospice. But then, as I faced each thing, chemotherapy and then radiation, I went through it again and again and again. But I also experienced the other stages.
Sure. In just a minute or two, we are going to bring forth our special guest tonight. One of the things that I didn't say Tuesday, probably because it just slipped my mind, is from time to time, I will slip back into denial about my mental health diagnoses, the schizophrenia and the paranoid schizophrenia is one of those things that every once in a while I'll say, this can't be happening to me. And I come from the perspective of being an ordained minister. And even though I'm human and you're an ordained minister and you're human, it's just something about having mental health challenges that sometimes makes me cringe, exclusively because I'm a minister and because I served 15 years in the United States Navy Chaplain Corps. Even though it was the result of serving under a terrorist commanding officer during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And I'm grateful to have some sensibility, what sensibility that I do have. But I'm sharing that for the audience, the listening audience, the viewing audience, to understand that it can happen to any of us where the blood is flowing in our veins over some trauma. And that trauma can be divorce. That trauma can be, in your case, the cancer, as well as what happened to you when you were on active duty. And I'll leave that to you to share or not to share, because the whole range of what we are talking about in terms of the stages of grief happens to everybody. It happens to a kid that whose puppy just died, or fish, or kitty cat,
A job loss.
or job loss. I mean, it just covers the whole range. And one of the things that we talked about on Tuesday that I'm hoping our guests will expand on tonight is in the book on death and dying that came out in 1964. Dr. Kubler-Ross included isolation along with denial. And I certainly would appreciate some conversation about that tonight. And one last thing, and then I'll introduce our guests. Remember, on Tuesday night, we had someone who posted that her husband had been dead a year, and she is still in denial. I hope that she will join us again tonight, as our guest, perhaps can give us a way of how we can become unstuck. And so, ladies and gentlemen, saints and ain'ts, friends and foe, family, we welcome you. And we welcome you to ask someone to join in with you, a friend, a colleague, ask someone to join you in having a party. What do they call those parties online, Chaplain Mo?
I don't know.
Don't know. Help me.
I'm not computer savvy.
A watch party.
Watch party. Because this is going to be quite a night that I have been looking forward to, because of our topic. We are in the business of helping people. And so, without any further ado, let me introduce to you the Reverend Dr. Jamie F. Eady. She is a pastoral theologian, a spiritual care practitioner, a loss navigation specialist. Now, you see that TM up there? That means that's her trademark. Really want to hear about that. And a death midwife. So, what a midwifery person does is bring a person into the world that is being born. And what a death midwifery does is assists the person who is going to live again to follow the process that's involved in moving on and transitioning and walking through that proverbial pearly gate at the end of life. Now, Dr. Edie, who is called Dr. J, is an incredibly talented woman. She got her D-Min at Rochester Theological Seminary. And I tell you, if you know anything about Rochester, you know that it is among the top 3 seminaries in the country. Only the best get in, and only the best graduate. She is also going to become a thanatologist. She is getting her certificate in thanatology, and I tell you, I am doing my best not to show any jealousy.
Why don't you define this for us, Chaplain PJ? Not everybody knows what thanatology is.
Okay, a thanatologist is a person that goes through a course of study. Actually, I'm going to ask Dr. Edie to do it.
Sure.
If that's okay. But let me finish introducing you now. You know, is that all you want me to say this time?
You do not have to read that whole thing.
Well, I want the community to know it's 3 pages long, and I got a feeling it ain't all on here. You know what I mean? Because she's a very humble person. You know how humble people are. They just almost drip with grace.
Don't read the whole thing. Don't read that.
So Dr. Edie, if you would please, what called you to this important and probably it's not likely to be a very popular route?
Right.
Did something happen in your family? Did something happen in your lifetime that said, okay, in addition to being an ordained minister, check this out, colleagues, in the Baptist Church, under the leadership of Reverend Dr. H. Beecher Hicks. Many of us has his book, Preaching Through a Storm. I have his book, Preaching Through a Storm. One of America's great preachers. I don't think he is retired yet, has he?
He's not pastoring, but he preaches and teaches,
okay,
from time to time, but he's not pastoring the church.
Okay, so what drew you? What drew you to the whole idea of midwifery, death midwifery, thanatology? But first, define for us thanatology.
Yeah, so thanatology is sort of the scientific study of death, grief, and loss, right? They used to have master programs, but now they're mostly certificate programs where you will study not just the stages, but sort of, because we have stages of grief, we have tasks, we have phases. Like we look at grief in so many different ways. So that person would go in and they would learn about just a very detailed study of grief. They would also sort of learn some of the physical changes that happen when someone is sort of near end of life. And yeah, I think that's pretty much the big picture of the certificate or degree program for thanatology. So I wanted to immerse myself in all things grief, all things law, so that I can do what I do better.
Okay. And did you have your eye on this when you were getting your DMin, when you were getting your MDiv?
Right. No, so because you asked the question, sort of, how did I find myself in this space, in the sort of death doula or death midwife, loss navigation specialist, which kind of fits into that space for me. And I can't point to a specific incident in my life where I said, oh, this is it, right? But I can go back to my very early losses, death losses. And I can see myself in those spaces, comforting others, being able to speak peace to the space where people were just having a grasp of what is happening without having been taught anything specific at that time, right? So I'm talking young girl, seeing, grandmother dies when I'm 19, cousin dies when I'm 13, and I'm able to enter into that space in a way that was soothing for others. Didn't think anything of it, just, okay, there's something that I do. When I got licensed in ministry prior to being ordained, I was in pastoral counseling. So providing support, my area of specialty was really domestic violence and sexual abuse and assault. So that's where I sort of landed in pastoral counseling, but I found that I was being pulled to hospital, nursing home, and end of life work.
Okay.
And I just went with it. It felt like something was pulling me, or someone was pulling me, but I also, I walked toward it without any sort of hesitation. And I would say about 10 or so years ago, I just sort of firmly planted myself in that space. And I said, okay, this is the work, right? I love to preach and teach and all of those things. And I do that when I can. But this is the space that needs me and that I need, right? Because I think it's always both and. It's something that we're called to, but it's also something that it's in us that says this is where you are supposed to go.
Sure.
So that's how I found myself there.
Okay. Yeah. Now that's a fascinating journey. Both Chaplain Maureen and I have a story that I'd like to share with you. That's a prelude to a question.
Okay.
On the 13th of November, my sister and I were having a conversation, and she said to me, I had a long conversation last night with Debbie. And I said to my sister, that's impossible, because Debbie's been dead for over 10 years. And she said, no, that's impossible, because I did have the conversation. And I said, well, what did you talk about? And she said, we talked about family. So I moved on to the next thing and said to her, I said, okay, now, for Thanksgiving, I'm sending you your goodies. I would try to send her a box of goodies because she was in the nursing home, diabetic. After we were quarantined, nobody could get in. She couldn't get out. And she said, well, I want some lemonade. I've just got a taste for an ice cold glass of lemonade. I said, okay, I'll send you that. And I'll send you your homemade chocolate chip cookies. And it will get there by Thanksgiving. And she said, it won't get here in time. And she died Thanksgiving Eve. Okay. Now, the question that preceded that, that explanation, do you keep a log of what people say, how people express that they know that the time is near?
So I log everything. I journal. So I write down or sort of, record myself, recapping my day, recapping experiences. So yes, I do have stories about what people have said as they entered into, maybe active dying stage, or sometimes we don't even know that the person is actively dying, but they know.
But they know.
But they know. And I say to people, because I work with families too, who, not just the person who is at end of life, but certainly do a lot of work with families. I tell people that this journey at end of life, just like your birth journey, you don't get to choose, but this end of life journey, that is between you and universe, you and God, you and something great. Like, that is that person's journey. I don't get to pick a day for you. That is your journey. And people will tell you, I'm getting ready to go home now. People will tell you, like you said, your sister said, oh, it won't get here in time. Like, I think there is something spiritual. There's something in us that may tap into a knowing that tells us that it's coming, that the time is coming. And so I certainly do have a journal of those types of stories where people have told me. I said, well, I'll see you tomorrow. No, baby, this is it.
Wow.
This is it. You'll see me today. I won't be here tomorrow. Or they'll say, tell my son or tell my grandchildren to come, because, they know the time is coming. So yeah, okay. I definitely have those stories.
Oh, that's amazing. I don't know if you have to have people's permission to tell those stories, but I would love, one of these days, I'm going to write the experience that I had with my sister. As a matter of fact, we entered into what I call the wisdom of the womb of wisdom. The first week we were quarantined, because she said to me, well, sis, I'll see you in glory. Well, see, I thought she was being funny. And I said to her, you speak for yourself. I'm not going anywhere. I laughed, but she didn't laugh because she was telling me.
She knew.
Right. And that was back in March. And over the next 9 months, we literally ate of the fruit of the Spirit. Literally. She became softer. She became kinder. We weren't fussing with each other anymore. It was a wonderful experience. And, it just never occurred to me. It wasn't in my spiritual awareness that she was developing a relationship with her baby sister that she had never had. And I was developing a relationship with my sister that I had never had. And we talked about things that we had never talked about before. It was just wonderful. And so someday, and I wish I had kept a diary, but it didn't. And so I'm not going to shoot myself. It is what it is. But I think I'll be able to remember some of it. Do you have any questions of Dr. J, Chaplain Mo? Jump on in anytime.
Too many.
Okay, program's only an hour, so and we're almost, and we're past the halfway mark. But help yourself, honey.
Just that, do you also find that the stages of grief move back and forth, and don't go in an orderly fashion all the time? Because that was my experience.
Right. It's funny you say that. So I understand Kubler-Ross and I appreciate her work. And I know she grew in her sort of understanding of how we move through grief, right? As she studied and learned and observed, she grew from her initial, here are the 5 stages, to, and sort of saying it's linear. You start here and you end up here, to it's more fluid. We move in and out of stages. Some stages don't even appear to exist for some of us, right? So like I can think about some death in my family that I experienced where denial was not really present, right? There may have been one moment where I said, oh no, this can't happen. But that was the extent of sort of that phase or stage denial. But anger was present for a long time. And then, right. And then sometimes we move in and out, as you mentioned, of those stages, that we can be in denial, we can be angry, we can go back to denial. So it's not linear. And I think that's what I always want people to understand. One, that grief is unrefined, it's raw, and it's messy. So to expect yourself to go through a very clean and linear stage of healing in grief is, we might need to throw that concept out the window, right? Because grief is
an unrealistic expectation.
Unrealistic. Thank you for that. I'm like, I lost the word I was trying, but yes, unrealistic expectation. Grief is raw. It's messy. There are people, myself, I've been grieving and sat in anger for a long time, and then was angry and accepted the loss, but very angry, right? So you can move in and out of the phases. You can skip a stage of grief, if you will. It's not linear. Allow yourself to be raw and messy as you move and navigate your way to healing. So even when we teach and talk about the stages of grief, as you mentioned, even at the start of the show, even backstage, sort of talking about how, I was here, but I was there more than once. I was there, I was out, I was back, and so helping people understand that is common. And to move through nice and neatly is not common. Yeah.
To move nicely and neatly is not
common.
Yeah. Okay.
In our grieving, it's to move from stage to stage or from phase to phase. And as we understand these stages of grief, right? These 5 stages, to move from stage to stage is not common. It's more common to move in and out of the stages, to revisit a stage, for it to be sort of cyclical. Like, that's more common than it is for someone to say, oh, I can clearly identify, I first experienced denial, I then experienced anger. People, they experience more than one stage at a time. So it's a little more messy. It's a little raw. That is more like how we experience our grieving and move toward our healing.
Okay. Let me share with you, Dr. J, that people are saying this is so good. Our administrator put in hers, laughing my butt off. I had to ask her, what did LMBO mean? And she put in there. And then from the listening audience, Elliot T. Ivy Sr. is sending you much
Pastor
love.
Ivy. Yes, Pastor Ivy.
Yes.
Great ministry.
And Jacqueline Milton.
Evangelist Milton. Yes.
Okay, she is saying, wow, powerful. We're going to pause here for a commercial break.
Okay. And
when we come back, I'd like for you, if you would please, to define another way of looking at what it means to be in denial, mm-hmm. and to offer some ways in which people who are stuck in denial, mm-hmm. may be able to become unstuck. I'd also like to know if you would share with us if it's really possible for a person to go through the stages and not know what the stages are, mm-hmm. and if it's possible for a person to never go mm-hmm. through any of the stages, just accept life as it comes to them. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, Dr. Kubler-Ross adds to denial isolation.
Yeah.
If you could talk with us a little bit about some of that. Do you have any other questions before we go on, Chaplain Mo, or are you going to wait until we come back?
I'm good.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand by. And here our amazing administrator with the following commercials.
Wow, this has been such an amazing broadcast so far. I almost didn't want to do announcements. I just wanted to keep listening and gleaning and learning about grief and how it shows up for us. So appreciative of Dr. Jamie Eady being with us tonight. But let's get into some announcements. First up, we want to invite you to join if you are LGBTQIA veteran or you are allied and also a veteran. We want you to join the TFAM National Veteran Support Group, the Veteran Among Us, LGBTQIA Veterans Plus. We are doing some amazing things. One of the things that we are doing is also talking about grief and managing grief and the stages of grief on the National Veteran Support Group platform. And we have other things coming up. We don't want you to miss anything. So please head on over to TFAM Veterans and join the group so that you can be kept up to date on all of the things that we are doing. Next up, and we are still staying in TFAM. We want you to join us every Monday for TFAM East Coast Region Intercessory Prayer. And this coming Monday, our guest intercessor will be Reverend Tanner Roseborough Marsh. She holds membership in my church, Rivers of Living Water Ministries, UCC, and at City of Refuge, UCC in Oakland, which is pastored by the phenomenal, our presiding prelate, Bishop Yvette A. Flunder. Speaking of Bishop, we want you to join us on Facebook and also on YouTube for Beyond the Gatekeepers every Wednesday night. Listen, if you have not seen a broadcast of Beyond the Gatekeepers, you don't know what you're missing. We invite you to join us Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time and 5 p.m. Pacific with Bishop A. Flunder, Bishop Yvette A. Flunder, Dr. Vanessa M. Brown, who is my pastor, and Bishop Carlton D. Pearson. We invite you to join us on Wednesday evenings. Dr. Jamie Eady is our esteemed guest today, and we certainly want to lift up her webinar that's coming up on January 29th at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Sitting at the Dock of the Bay When Grief Has You Feeling Stuck. And so this is right on time for the conversation that we are having. And so we do invite you to head on over to tinyurl.com/navigate grief to sign up for this webinar. It is something, if you are grieving or if you experience loss or you're grappling, you're struggling with it, we do invite you to come and take part in this free webinar. Next up, Cara Solutions. Focus on your passion. Let Cara handle the rest. Cara offers administrative business and consulting services for dreamers, visionaries, entrepreneurs, faith-based and community-based organizations. An example of what a service that Cara offers is what you're watching right now. So this broadcast is powered by Cara Solutions. I'm gonna that's me right there. Hey y'all. And so I am offering remote production and video conferencing, administrative and tech support. Let Cara do the heavy lifting so that you can focus on your event. So if you're interested in this service or in anything that Cara has, a wide range of services, I want you to head over to www.cara-solutions.com and I'll be sure to get back with you. As you know, if you are a regular watcher of Triumphant Thursdays, there are advertising and sponsorship opportunities available. And so this is a way that you can support us and that we can support you in showcasing your business or your product. And there are 3 ways that you can advertise or sponsor with us. First is an info listing or a banner. And let me show you what that would look like if I could find it. Oh yeah, this is a banner. That's a banner, right? So that little strip right there for $15 a week, we will make sure that your content is in a banner and we will show it on our program so that our watchers can see that. A static overlay is what you are looking at right now. And so this would cover the entire screen, and that's $25 per week. Or a video ad would be $40 per week. And I know Chaplain PJ is going to ask me to show that my video. So I want you to see what it would look like if it were a video ad. Let me just show you that real quickly. so that there is a video ad. And so if you need a static or video ad created, feel free to contact me at sue@cara-solutions.com. We thank you for hanging out with us today. We're getting ready to get back into our program. And so without further ado, let's get back. Chaplain PJ, Chaplain Maureen, and Dr. Jamie Eady.
Thank you so much, Pastor Sue, for that incredible, makes me want to buy everything on there. One of the things that I did not share, Dr. Eady, that I wish to share with the listening community is that you believe that all Black lives matter. And I think it's important for the listening community and the viewing community to know not only that about you, but that you enjoy art and you enjoy traveling, the 90s hip hop, poetry, pink lipstick. Why are you not wearing it tonight?
I know.
Laughter, which is a healing component all by itself, and solitude, which is also an incredible way to connect soul to soul, with our soul with God's soul, and vice versa. So you're an amazing person to have accomplished an awful lot to be looking like you're in your late 20s. So you're welcome.
Thank you.
So one of the questions that we have in our comment that I don't know we'll have time to get to it tonight, maybe at least to repeat your upcoming event. And the question is, what are some, and it's from Kim Kendrick.
Yeah.
Did you put it up there?
Yep, I see it right on the screen.
You see it?
Yep. So what are some tools to assist youth to move through the stages of grief? And then we have some other things and we can kind of put all that together because
sure.
But I do think it's important that we talk about youth and young people because we need more literature out there and even programs like this that are kind of geared to youth where we can get them in a room and have conversation. So the first thing I always let people know is sort of what I said earlier, that grieving is raw and it's messy. So one, just affirming our young people that what they're feeling is normal and giving space to feel and to name, giving space to, well, maybe the opposite way, but to name and to feel and to name, to get our young people where we can talk, how are you feeling today? And let them give us what they're feeling. If they need to color it out, if they need to draw it, as they be obviously a little older, they may be able to communicate it a little bit differently, but really giving space for people, young people and older people alike, to name what they're feeling and to say, I hear you, I see you, and that's okay. I think far too often when we are grieving, when we're dealing with mental health, when we're dealing with various kinds of trauma, we add a stigma to it and we don't give people space to talk about it. We also discount young people's experience. We discount children's experiences. So we've been in a pandemic for a year. We've been sort of locked in our homes I remember February 2020, I did a church service. My pastor here in Philadelphia is Reverend Dr. Leslie Callahan at the St. Paul's Baptist Church. Now, we had one service, everybody was in church. The following week, it was 10 of us. The week after that, we were online, like just that quick. Well, the way our lives changed, that's the same way our children's lives changed. They were going to school, meeting up with their best friends. They were having recess and pizza parties or whatever. I don't, I think we had pizza parties. I think they might still have pizza parties, but whatever it was that they were doing in school is important to them. And so we often discount and discredit their experience because maybe they didn't lose a job, right? But it doesn't matter. They lost recess with friends. And that is just as impactful to a 7-year-old as losing a job is to a 37-year-old, right? It hits us in a way that makes us sit down, takes our breath away. So acknowledging that with your young people. So naming and giving space to feel. And then I'll talk a little bit more about that on my webinar, but hopefully that helps us to help have young people, invite them in, let them know it's normal, acknowledge their loss as valid, acknowledge the loss of pizza parties on Friday as valid. That is a valid loss for a person in first grade. That's
So how do those of us who grew up being told children are to be seen and not heard, and as adults kind of cringe as we're trying to figure out how to respond to our children who are more verbal?
Yeah. So first of all, let's just admit that a lot of what we were taught needs to be revised and revisited. Like we as an adult woman, I had to sit back and say, you know what, a lot of stuff that I was taught, and I understand why my grandmother or why my mother or father kind of gave me that, right? But we all grow and evolve. And the truth is that the children need to be seen and not heard. I don't agree with that. And I know that being seen and not heard is not conducive to healing. That if I'm unable to name and to emote, in many ways, I'm that person that's sitting at the dock of the bay with some things that are stuck in me that when I become an adult, now I want to know why a person doesn't communicate, why they can't explain their emotions, all of this. Well, it's because some of the things we told or tell our children block that. And so, I would say we need to admit that some of what we were taught is wrong, and maybe wrong is not the right word, but some of what we were taught needs to be revised, that we need to evolve. And with that, invite our children in to let them know that, listen, this is a journey that we can take together. Mm-hmm. I'm going to honor your journey as a child. Like, and let me draw it out. Talk to me. What are you feeling? And let's help people name their emotions. Let's not, in church spaces that I've been in, there are certain things that you can do, right? So if you are in pain, you can praise your way out of the pain and move to victory very quickly. But the truth is that there are some pains that clapping my hands and shouting doesn't necessarily move me through, right? So being able to really revisit our own theology, our own understanding of God in relation to us, our own understanding of ourselves, our understanding of us in relation to our brothers, our sisters, our community, all of that needs to be revisited as we explore what it means to heal from our grief and our loss and our trauma. So hopefully that helps. And then that takes us to something else you talked about, and that was isolation. So here's one of the things. Often, and I'm glad we talked about children, if we don't give space to name and to feel, people detach themselves from community. We isolate ourselves. If I'm unable to name in community and feel in community with acceptance, then I don't want to name and feel in community, right? Okay. If I'm right, y'all understand what I'm saying here, right? That if you can't enter into a space with community, whether your community is your family, your school, your church, if I can't sit in that space and actually name that I'm angry, I'm a 7-year-old and my mother is no longer here. I'm angry that she died. And right now I feel like I'm angry with God. If I'm unable to invite that and to have that conversation where I won't be judged, where somebody will sit with me in my anger and say, you know what? I feel you. I understand that. It does seem unfair that your mom is not here anymore. Like, to be able to do that, right? When we don't do that, when we don't invite people into a sacred space for healing, where they can actually say what they feel without judgment, where they can say, I'm depressed. I suffer from anxiety. Where they can come in and say that, then they do it alone.
Okay.
We isolate ourselves. And so when you think about the stages or phases or the way we move in and out of how we exercise or move through grief, denial is maybe this is not happening at all. It didn't happen. And very quick story. I had a family. I serve as a chaplain in a level 1 hospital in Philadelphia, the Albert Einstein Medical Center. And I had a family where medical staff performed CPR for almost 40 minutes because the family was like, there's no way that this patient, and I won't say his name, but I still know his name, that this patient is dying. Like, no, you fixed it, you do it. Because I can't accept that my son, who is 25, is dying, right? And we go into this space of denial. But if a family who is in that stage of denial, now that we've accepted that the loss is here, or are trying to accept that the loss is here, if I can't come into this space and honestly emote that, if I can't sit with you and tell you that I can't believe that God took, because that's sometimes what people say, that God took or God allowed this to happen, then I separate from the space where I might be able to receive healing. And so isolation then comes. And now, even if I'm a person who is going through end of life, it is hard to be in a space where people show pity and not necessarily empathy, where people show pity and are not necessarily just being present. And so I withdraw from that space. I don't want to be in a space.
Can I interject one thing there?
Yes.
As I was going through my cancer and I was in the hospice, nobody would come and visit me. I was isolated because they couldn't accept that I might be dying.
Yes.
And so they wouldn't come and visit me because they couldn't deal. And so I ended up very lonely in the hospital.
Yeah. And we do, because we don't talk about death in this in general, right? It's a stigma. It's tough. And I'll be the first to tell you, it's hard to talk about your own mortality or the mortality of people you love. But we have to find a way to bring language around death and dying into our families, into our churches, into our communities, because there's no reason why someone who was in hospice can't have someone go by and spend time. There's no reason why when you are going through end of life that you should, I say should, have to go through it alone, because people are present. But the stigma, and I don't know what to say if I'm in your space, if you are in hospice or at end of life, because we know people are in hospice for various reasons, right? That people go into palliative care or hospice and then they live another 5, 6, 10 years. So we know it doesn't mean end of life, right? Necessarily. However, because we have not had this conversation around death and dying, that when someone gets into a palliative or a hospice state, we separate. I don't know what to say. I can't go into that space. I'm afraid. All of that. We have to be able to engage in that conversation. We have to be able to let people bring their fear of losing a loved one into the space. I love you. And of course, I want you to be here with me. Of course, I want to call you on the phone. Of course, I want to touch you. And it might come a day when I can't do that. But if I invite those types of conversations into the space, I'm not saying that the fear of losing a loved one, and I say losing a loved one, but the way I feel is that we never lose anyone that was here, that their memory is always present with us. So I'm saying losing, but please understand what I mean by that, that they're not physically here for us to touch them. But if I'm unable to allow people to engage in that kind of conversation, then 1, I'm in denial. 2, you're isolated, and there's no healing that can take place in that space. So thank you for sharing that, because it happens far too often that someone will end up in a nursing home or in hospice or in palliative care, and there are no visitors. And at another time, maybe Chaplain PJ, Dr. PJ can have us talk about how this pandemic has compounded our grief because it has forced isolation on us, right? It has forced denial. Funerals and memorials are also integral part of our healing because it allows us some kind of closure. But when we don't have that, people may sit in denial a little bit longer and they're isolated from their loved ones. So maybe one day we'll come back and talk about that too. I know it's 9:28. I know when to stop talking and pass it back to the host of the show.
Well, I am so happy that you opened the door for me to invite you back. And, we have conversation after the broadcast. And if you would stay on after the broadcast, we can continue having conversations about that. I don't want to stop, but there's so much more, and I was just so into what you were saying, and there are so many online that are sitting with bated breath, waiting for you to do so, for you to continue. But yes, for this week, we have to stop. If this has been a blessing to you, and I know in my heart, I know in my soul that it has been, we're going to ask you to sow a seed in our ministry. You can do so on our Cash App at Space for Grace MI, or you may send a paper check to Post Office Box 23173, Lansing, Michigan 48909, and make the check payable to Space for Grace Without Walls United Church of Christ, or UCC. No gift is too small or too great. We appreciate the ministry. We appreciate the people that our administrator is bringing into our broadcast. Dr. J is a gift from Pastor Sue, our administrator, and I also want to put a shout out of gratitude for Pastor Sue. She is a seminarian. She is one of the pastors at the Shepherd's Table at Rivers of Living Water, United Church of Christ. And I want to give a shout out to her pastor and my colleague, the Reverend Dr. Bishop Elect Vanessa M. Brown, and Pastor Sue, our administrator, is also the national youth minister for the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries, which was founded by our bishop and prelate, the Reverend Dr. Bishop Yvette Adrienne Flunder. She's also the founding pastor of City of Refuge, now located in Oakland, California. Last but not least, and I also want to give a shout out, want to say that Bishop Flunder is also Chaplain Maureen's bishop and pastor. So we are under the leadership of some powerful people who are making an impact in the nation and around the world. I know that the fellowship.
Speaking of which, Pastor Flunder is on the inaugural interfaith prayer service, so please give a watch to that.
Yes, absolutely. We are so proud of Bishop Flunder. She has stepped out there in faith and has some incredible benchmarks to her life, in addition to being a world-renowned gospel singer. You're talking about a woman that can sing, good God, and can preach. Good God Almighty! Just a marvelous person, and humble enough to take people like myself under her wing, and I greatly appreciate it. We have been friends for over 30 years. Doesn't seem like it, but it's a wonderful thing. We want to ask you to pray for us. But before we ask you to pray for us, we want to ask you to pray for yourself. There is nothing wrong with you praying for you. Nobody knows your circumstances. Nobody knows your situation better than you know your situation. And it's not like God doesn't already know. But when we have this love affair with the Lord, it's kind of like, okay, let's turn off the lights and have some conversation. Teddy Pendergrass made that pop, turn out the light. Well, it's nice to do that with God from time to time. Just say, hey, for the next 15, 20, 30, 40, an hour, minute, 60 minutes, God is just you and me. And there's a song that goes, how long has it been since you talked with the Lord and told God your heart's desire? And I think, I've heard people say, God's not interested in me. Oh, yes, God is very interested. You do not have anything going on in your life that is not of keen interest to your Creator. Wow. And if anybody tells you anything differently, they're lying to you. Let's just put it out there in the words of Joe Madison's grandfather. Let's just put it out there where the goats can get it. You know what that means? Just get to the root. Let's just get to the root of the matter. You, no matter what you've done, are important to your Creator. And God is waiting. However you define your God is waiting for you. So pray for yourself. But pray for us too. We are all on a journey from the womb, our mother's womb or the petri dish, to the womb of the earth as a whole person or as ashes or by fire. Either way, the journey is about you and God. Getting to know who you are means getting to know who God is. It's just that simple. I know one of the things I was going to say was that one of the things that crippled me in unlearning some things in order to learn the right things was I was asking myself the question, well, did my pastor lie to me? No. My pastor taught me what my pastor knew. Did my parents lie to me? No. My parents followed what the pastor was teaching, which was all the pastor knew. And so we have to forgive ourselves for living in ignorance, because many of us do because we choose to. So let's pray about that too, because we want to be made whole in this life. We want to reduce the number of deaths by suicide in this life. We want people to understand that life is priceless and life is precious. So pray. When you pray for all of these things. And I didn't mean to go into a whole number, but I'm very excited about the life I am having with God, in my case through Jesus Christ. So if your God is a tree, then make an appointment and go out there and hug that tree, honey, until that tree talks to you. Whatever you need to do to get closer to the things that have been created, not the things that have been made, the things that have been created by hands that are not ours. That's who we want you to be in touch with. All right. I don't want to say goodnight, but we're 8 minutes over. But we do want you to pray. We do want you to plant a seed into our ministry. And we do want you to be good to you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your presence. We are honored. We are blessed. And we pray that we are a blessing to you. Good night.